And tonight, it is just a matter of time in the Aurora Theater trial. The jury must now decide if the shooter will be put to death. We have team coverage for you tonight. Marshall Zellinger was in the courtroom listening to the final closing arguments. But first, my co-anchor Ann Trujillo is leading off our coverage tonight from outside the courtroom. Ann?
And Eric, all eyes are right here on the Arapahoe County Justice Center as the jury prepares to make the final decision in this trial. The jury got the case about 3 o'clock this afternoon. There was a chance we could have had a verdict today, but then they decided to go home at 4:30 this afternoon. Neither side giving a rebuttal of the closing arguments, giving the jury an extra 40 minutes to deliberate this afternoon. So here it is. It's decision time, death or life.
This building that we're in is not the Arapahoe County Eye for an Eye Center or Revenge Center or Vengeance Center. It is a justice center. And that is what you use to determine what the appropriate sentence for what he did is.
Death is not a punishment for mental illness. And death is not a cure or a solution for mental illness. And the death of a seriously mentally ill man is not justice, no matter how tragic the case is.
So the jury will be back here at 8:30 again to deliberate. And 7 News reporter Marshall Zellinger was in the courtroom today during those closing arguments when a silent protest of sorts took place. Marshall?
And the family members of most of the killed victims walked out in the middle of the closing arguments. The gallery was packed during the district attorney's turn to give closing arguments, but went to a bit of a ghost town as soon as the defense attorney had her turn.
Passionate.
As defense attorney Tamara Brady begins her closing arguments, watch as the other attorneys turn toward the exit. Family members of the killed victims, like Jessica Gawey's parents, Alex Teves' mom, and Alex Sullivan's dad, all walked out when she started to defend the shooter's life.
There is not now, nor will there ever be, a time when it is appropriate to execute a seriously mentally ill man.
And for James Egan Holmes, justice is death.
District Attorney George Brockler repeating what he said in 2013 when he decided to seek the death penalty, showing jurors photos of the crime scene and again more photos of the victims killed, all while repeatedly asking the jury if they were really going to give him a life sentence.
He stops pulling the trigger only because the trigger stopped working. Does that get a life sentence?
I, as a defense attorney, would have objected to that.
7 News legal analyst Dan Recht seemed surprised the DA was turning the question around on the jury.
The burden is completely on the prosecution. It seemed as though Brockler was turning that burden on its head.
Mercy says more about you than it says about him.
The defense asking the jury to sleep on their decision, which they will, at least for tonight.
The deaths of all of those people cannot be answered by another death.
The jury has 3 options for each of the 12 killed victims. 1, the death penalty, 2, life in prison, or the third option would be we can't come to a unanimous decision, which essentially would be life in prison. Now, of the 12 victims, they only need to find the death penalty for one of them for that to be the sentence. Ann?
All right, Marshall, thank you. And of course, there is no telling how long these deliberations will last. The jury reaching that first guilty verdict in just 13 hours. We could have our next answer tomorrow, perhaps not. So far, these short deliberations do not bode well for the defense, but there is no telling what happens next.
If the defense has persuaded any of the jurors, the discussion will focus on executing severely severely mentally ill people and whether that's the right thing to do or not.
So life behind bars, that is still not off the table. Every member of the jury must now agree on the death penalty, as you heard. Our legal expert, Dan Recht, he says as far as how long the deliberations will last, he says his gut is that this will take several days. Now, if the jury decides death for the shooter, he will join 3 others on Colorado's death row. First, there's Nathan Dunlap, convicted of killing 4 people inside an Aurora Chuck E. Cheese in 1993. His execution was set to take place in 2014. However, Governor John Hickenlooper issued a temporary reprieve, so now that's on hold. The other two men on death row, Robert Ray and Sir Mario Owens, they were convicted in the murders of Javad Marshall Fields and his fiancée Vivian Wolfe. Marshall Fields was supposed to testify against Ray and Owens in another murder case. A date for their executions has not been set. So we are keeping a very close eye on the courthouse here until this verdict comes down. You can always go to the 7 News app for updated information, sign up for breaking news alerts, and you will know exactly when the jury makes a decision, and then we will air the decision right here on 7 News and on the 7 News app and the denverchannel.com. Eric?